Let's go to Mary Holm. You a Chicago fan, Mary?
Yeah, I do rather like Chicago. I lived in Chicago for 8 years.
Of course you did, yeah.
So, it brings back those thoughts.
Yeah.
Yes.
I always think of Love Songs to Midnight, which I used to, it's a bit of a sad thing for a young kid to listen to, but I used to listen to that when I was sort of 10 or 11 years old. Pete Sinclair and...
Yeah, I listened to that.
Yeah.
And
dedications, and it was wall-to-wall Chicago.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, but it was wonderful.
Yeah.
I thought, enjoyed it.
Hey, thank you for coming in to join us, and you got a bit of a different session for us today.
Yes. And last week I was talking to Mark Leishman about a new book I've got out, and we had 4 books to give away, and so we asked people to say in 20 words or fewer, what they'd done best what was the best financial move they'd made in their lives.
Great.
And people came up with some really interesting ones. Some of them were funny, some of them were a bit poignant, but a lot of them were good, and a lot of them were quite thought-provoking, actually. So I thought it might be interesting to just have a look through.
Yes, please.
Some of the ones that worked well.
And you sort of grouped them into categories, did you?
Yes, yeah. I found there were 5 or 6 about marriage, and for example, one person said marrying a frugal woman always looks for bargains, and another one said marrying a man with a similar attitude to money, which I think is a really interesting thing to think about.
It's so tough for couples, can't it? If you just don't see the things the same way.
Yeah.
It's not the sort of thing you discuss on a first date.
No, or even before you get married. But people, we have one person who, easy come, easy go, and let's just spend all the money, and another one who's very frugal. It can ruin a whole relationship, actually. So that was
because it seems so innate, right? Whatever you are, it's very, very hard to change your perspective or your approach.
Yes, because it comes from childhood or wherever it comes from. Yes, and so that was an interesting, quite a thoughtful one, I thought. Someone else said marrying a man who knows how to work the stock market. Now that was one where I thought, because as you know, I'm not a great fan of people who work out, which individual shares to buy and when to buy them and when to sell them.
Yeah.
People who do that generally do reasonably well, but they don't tend to do as well as someone who just buys into a low-fee fund and holds. But having said that, usually they do okay, and this person was obviously happy that their partner had done that.
It also means if your partner has the expertise and responsibility for anything, it means you sort of get to relax a bit. It's like
that's right.
They've got it sorted, and I know that we've talked about before. Sometimes that doesn't end up being in your best interest if you find yourself single later in life. But it's part of being in a relationship sometimes, isn't it? You kind of assign responsibilities and you do that, so I don't have to. I can take it off my mind. That's
right, but I think in the financial stuff, it is particularly worrying. I mean, it's fine if one person's really good at gardening or really good at cooking or something like that, because if the relationship ends, the other person can usually put a meal together and maybe just doesn't have a garden. But everybody's got to understand a bit about money, so I really do urge people not to let your partner kind of run the money too much. Yeah. Now, one of the, because we haven't announced who won the prizes for this draw, and so one of the, so I'm just going, as we go through, going to mention this next one was one of the 4 people who won a copy of the book.
Great.
And that was someone called Erin, who said, marrying a man twice my age who had no dependent children. And I thought, in a way, it's terrible. But
it made you laugh.
It made me laugh, yeah. And it might not even necessarily be true, but it might. Yeah. But it had a bit of humour, and I always love that.
These winners get to pick between the hard copy book and your flash new audio version of the book, Mary, that you've painstakingly recorded?
No, they don't. Yeah, I did record a copy of the book, which was interesting.
That's been tiring for the voice.
Yes, it is. I mean, we did it in about 2-hour sessions, 2 to 3 hour sessions. It's amazing how many times you misspeak, though.
Yeah.
And they stop you on every time you say a word a little bit wrong or get it wrong.
Or they say, well, could you just try that one again? And you get a little bit offended. You say, what was wrong with that one?
I took their word for it. It was an interesting process, but the audiobook's coming out in a few days.
Yeah, cool.
But actually, this contest, the HarperCollins, the publisher, said, no, let's just make
Great.
the paper copy of the book. Yes, yeah. But one other person, while we're still talking about marriage, had another particular best financial move, but he added at the end, have stayed married. And I thought, well, yeah, it's true, because that's ending a marriage is usually financially pretty bad for both sides.
It's not a reason to stay married, but it is a benefit to staying married.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's how you might put it. And then on the other hand, one person said that their best financial move was getting divorced because it incentivized her to learn about money. And she said she had $23,000 at that point, and now she's got $8 million.
Gosh.
In 28 years. So she didn't go into how she turned her 23,000 into 8 million.
But probably New Zealand involves property.
Yeah, look, it probably does. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And we'll get on to some more property ones in a minute. But one person only talked about getting rid of debt. And, ideally I'd like more people to, but it's not a very exciting topic. No. But that person said we lived off our lower wage and paid off the mortgage with the higher wage, and we got very sick of meatloaf, she said. But that's what she did.
And it's been ages since I had a good meatloaf.
Yeah. Well,
do you make a meatloaf?
I haven't for a long, long time either. No, I hang about with quite a few vegetarians. So.
Yeah. Mum used to make nutloaf when I was growing up.
Yes. Yeah.
Meatloaf. Okay, I'll add that to the rotation.
Quite good winter food. Yes. A couple on budgeting that I thought were quite interesting. One said, being honest with myself regarding my needs and wants, needs versus wants, and setting up automatic payments each fortnight to various accounts, such as savings, travel, emergency pets, car maintenance. Now, that person absolutely broke the 20-word limit, and quite a few people did, and therefore they were disqualified from winning, but they were interesting.
She's firm but fair, Mary.
Yes, well, we've got...
She was specific about the number of words that you're allowed to use.
It's because part of the fun
unfair on the other people.
It is, and part of the fun is doing it in 20 words. That's the little challenge. But another prize winner, he said, bought golden kiwi 1972, age 6, didn't win, never bought another lottery ticket. The alternative was 25-cent mixtures. So after he lost golden kiwi, he turned to lollies, apparently, yes, and learned a lesson for life at age 6. Yes, so that was quite sweet. So that person also won a prize. Somebody said doubling contributions to KiwiSaver many years ago for 9 years while my income allowed it. And that is a neat thing to do. If you find your income then goes down, perhaps fair enough to reduce it, but it's a great idea to put more into KiwiSaver than the minimum if you can. And this person's pointing out it was many years ago they did it, and I think they've since probably found that money's grown handsomely over time. Somebody else said, I've sat on my hands in recent months. But he did add, I continue to invest in usual stocks and shares as they are cheaper. So he's not doing much while in a volatile market, but then to the extent he's doing anything, he's buying more shares, which is not a bad idea when the markets are down.
I just had a look earlier today, Mary.
They've gone up a bit, haven't they?
Would you like to guess? It's a bit mean, isn't it? What the S&P 500, the main US stock exchange, has done over the last 12 months?
Over the last 12 months, it would still be up.
6% up.
Yeah, yes. No, that's interesting. Yes, because it had a very good year last year. Yeah. Driven largely by the high-tech stocks.
Can I share I was talking earlier today about how many podcasts I'm listening to, and one of the one of the ones I was listening to a money podcast, and they were talking about how the stock market is not a good indicator of the wider economy,
No.
but it gets reported on a lot by media and newspapers because you can actually point to it and look at it going up and down.
Yes.
And so this person was saying, and I'll see if I can get this right, someone looking to the stock market to try and gauge the health of the economy is like the drunk looking under the street lamp for his car keys because that's where the light is.
Yes, yeah. That's actually
very
a very good,
Yeah.
a very good quote.
I think that might have been
Yes.
Paul Krugman, ex-New York Times.
Oh yes, yes, clever man. Yeah, yes, that's absolutely true. The stock market. I mean, there are quite a lot of times where people can't really explain why it's suddenly gone up or suddenly gone down. And once it starts rising, more and more people leap in and buy.
Yeah.
And once it starts falling, more and more people leap in and
Yeah,
sell.
I've heard a view that actually the
Yes.
people doing the buying and selling are more basic than we think, and they're not responding to information, they're responding to sort of received wisdom,
Yes.
which explains why when there's a new headline going one direction, it just bounces back
Keeps
up again.
going.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not really received wisdom; it's received idiocy sometimes.
Yeah.
It's it's not. It's very interesting the way the markets. And at the moment, I think they're awfully jittery, and so they overreact, tend to one way or another to what's going on. I mean, the news of Trump trying to do better with China today, I understand. And
Yeah, now it's up 1% the last 24 hours.
which is a lot.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
It's interesting. Then we turn to good old New Zealand property. We had a few people commenting on that. And here's one that I awarded a book to. That person said, I rented out my oversized house and built an off-grid cottage so that I could stop working full-time at 56. So that person, I think that was a man, yes. That was Phil Ellerly of Nunu Whangarei.
Oh, Nangaroo, yeah.
Yeah,
Up on the Tutakaka coast, yeah.
Yeah. And so he had a big house and he rented that out to somebody else and built himself an off-grid cottage so that then he'd have more income coming in from the rent to cover the costs of building the cottage probably. And I thought that's creative. And he sounded as though he was
Good
happy
way of
about
using a
doing
big
that.
asset that you're not maybe making the most of on your own.
Yeah, and not necessarily sell it. He might at that point have thought he didn't want to sell the house at that time. And then there were a couple of other interesting property ones. One person said they bought cheaply at Lake Hawea in 1985. You always get stories like this of people who bought... who was it I was listening to on the radio this morning that had some land on Waiheke, I think, and years ago, I think in a hippie situation or something, and they sold it and they wished like anything they had kept it. There's a lot of stories like that. But so this person bought cheaply at Lake Hawea, and then another one bought cheaply near Queenstown, so both down in the central Otago area, and that was in the early 70s. And the bit I liked about the Queenstown one, even though they broke the 20-word rule, was they said, we also bought a $500 caravan to live in on the land for the next 18 months until the canvas awning collapsed under the weight of the snow the second winter. I thought, oh my goodness, if there's enough snow to be collapsing the awning, they're living in a caravan.
Not known for insulation properties, are they, caravans?
They're not. No. So they perhaps deserve to do well out of that investment in the long run. And then there was somebody moving beyond bank accounts into managed funds, which was always a good idea. And the fourth prize went to somebody who bought, it says, I bought a Hotary, so Ralph Hotary painting, for $500, sold it for $40,000. That paid my fees at art school. So how wonderful, what an appropriate use of a profit made from buying a work of art and then selling it at a big profit. So I like that one.
Do you think they should have spent it on a degree in finance?
No, I think...
Because if they got an art qualification,
Oh, look, no, there was somebody called Jane Malthus of Outram who won that book. No, I think it's wonderful that she's an artist.
No,
I hope she still is.
Me too, Jane. Hello.
Yeah.
Just being naughty, really.
Yes, you are being naughty. A couple more that I liked. Somebody said his best investment ever was in myself. He says, in education. He got a master's at Auckland, a PhD in America, got jobs around the world. This was interesting, including leading a team that improved the global ozone layer, thereby saving literally millions of people from exposure to excess UV radiation.
It's quite a legacy, isn't it?
Yeah, so that person did something amazing with their education, and so, you know, we can't deny that was a good investment. Another one said they spent the money on a round-the-world trip after saving for 2 years in Saudi Arabia. Life experience more important presumably than money, and you know, I wouldn't argue with that. I think that's neat. And finally, there were a couple where people did set up savings for their children. One said they started a savings account for my twin daughters when they were born. By the time they went to university, they had $30,000 each, which is fantastic. And that's what can happen if you set up savings for children when they're very young, and perhaps put it into a KiwiSaver, a higher risk fund is a good idea. And then by the time, although in that case you couldn't get the money out to go to university, it'd have to be for a first home. But presumably this one was outside KiwiSaver, but neat thing to do for some children. And another one said setting up KiwiSaver for 3 sons when they were young. They got the free $1,000, which was at the beginning of KiwiSaver, put in a small amount fortnightly. The grandparents also put in birthday and Christmas money, and now they already have a nice little nest egg to help towards buying first homes. And that's people, some families, aunts and uncles, all sorts of people put in, and it might be $5 a month into a child's KiwiSaver account, and it can all really, and sometimes people do it for friends' children too. You know, it doesn't have to be family. It's a pretty neat thing to do for a kid to just get the ball rolling. So can I just quickly read out the winners, because I'm not sure I named all of them. There was Jane Malthus from Outram, Erin, who didn't give a last name, from Greytown, Phil Alalee from Whangarei, or no, you say it again, Nangaru, Whangarei, and Alan Hawkins from Rangiora were the 4 winners. So thanks everybody, because I thought really interesting to read the entries, and a lot of really good thinking going into them.
Kia ora, Jessie, says Ange. Oops, I missed that there was a 20-word limit for the Mary Holm competition. I've got a 4-month-old baby, so I'm in and out of listening, but I was so glad to hear she talked about my entry and to learn from the others too. That's nice, isn't it?
Yeah, lovely. Yes.
And
if you've got a 4-month-old baby, you're allowed to not be fully concentrated.
Correct,
yes.
Correct. And one other person, I thought this was a good suggestion, quite a simple one. They saved money by switching from European to Japanese cars.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
It's a good game.
Indeed.
Lovely to have you in. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Jess.
Mary Holm, every couple of weeks, she's our personal finance expert.